And do another one real quick. Well, whatever.
On what?
Cultivating yourself.
Cultivating myself.
Okay. Welcome back to another episode of
Classical Rebellion.
Today, we are going today, which is the same day as
we're carrying on.
We're carrying on with the new episode, same clothes. The idea of you, me, John, as audience members, having a sacred duty to cultivate ourselves in order to not just appreciate, but move freely within any given concert. Do you have thoughts on that? And how to go about it? You want me to start?
You just have to do it. You have to start somewhere. And I think an important thing for young listeners to realize is that...
not just young listeners.
No, but I'm speaking specifically to...
Young to the symphony orchestra.
Well, yeah, okay. All right. Anybody who's coming 50s, to symphonic music, I think it's important for them to know that you're allowed not to like something.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
You know, there's you like what you like.
Yep.
And if what you like is not what, say, modernist critics like, well, to hell with them. You know, I mean, that you are allowed to have your likes. You know, perhaps you like music, you really like it, you just get your jollies from Milton Babbitt, you know, and go ahead and listen to it, see if you like it. Or, you know...
But he doesn't care if you're listening.
Plinkety-plunkety, modernistic, claptrap nonsense, you know, if you like that, you like it. That's okay. You like it. It's what you like, and you must follow what you like around where it leads to because everything in music is interconnected. All the significant composers stood on the shoulders of somebody else. So you find out what came before that, or who else was, and who else did they influence, and you got it, but you have to take the plunge, and you have to spend the time to do it.
Right. Well, it's easier now than ever, though. Like, it's right there. You can go down a YouTube rabbit hole on any topic you want. Just pick classical music to do it.
Yeah.
Here's what you're saying about you like what you like, and it's okay not to like something. I wrote about this a long time ago, and I'll revisit the idea. It's a big problem for classical music because if I'm at a museum and I come across some piece of nonsense, I can go, that's nonsense, and move on. If I'm caught at a concert with a piece of nonsense, I either sit there and deal with it, or I stand up and leave in front of God and everybody, which is a much different thing.
Or perhaps you clock your own take on it and you write about it. And you write someplace where somebody's going to see it and you say so. Have a take. Have a take. And say so.
That leads me to another part of the cultivating yourself as an audience member. A big part of that is discussing it with someone after the concert.
Indeed.
And getting their ideas,
there needs to be a
feelings.
conversation.
Yes. There are times when I can't wait for the concert to get over so I can have the conversation. Like, okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay, let's go. I got to talk. We got to talk about this.
No, absolutely. And it's that conversation that becomes a cultural fabric that is bound together and that coheres amongst human beings.
Yes.
What's really critical. That's what it's all for.
Yes.
Is to bring us to a level of coherence, even if it's disagreement, that we have a conversation about it.
Yes. Like we were just talking about Mahler, and Mahler's dead to me, and not
Mahler's alive to me.
John, and that's fine. I didn't try to kill his, and he didn't try to.
He wasn't Garrett.
Resurrect mine.
Garrett Harris, Killer of Dreams. You know,
Yeah.
no, it's just that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So everybody's got a different experience, but understand what your experience is and look at it critically and have a take about it. You might find that some of your own observations about it surprise even you.
Once you get into a kind of...
I really didn't think I was going to like that, but actually, there was this one part that made me think about this, and then I understood the whole thing differently. It could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so going into a concert, though, so the way...
I kind of think we need that. We need that right now.
Yeah, the way to... I'm going to make myself comfortable here.
Yeah, enjoy.
The way to have the conversation, you have to have some information beforehand about what it is you're experiencing. Now, I'm not saying that you go into a concert armed with all this information about the composers and the period and what was happening in the composer's life.
But you can.
You can have all those things and then focus on the music and, this meant this to the composer and it meant that to the composer. And at this point, it must have been when the composer was experiencing... No. You're not here to look at a painting and figure out what Rembrandt was feeling. It's what you're feeling looking at the painting. It's what you're feeling listening to the music. You have that information in your head and you might need to access it, but you don't focus on trying to figure out what the composer was trying, what the meaning was trying, that the composer was trying to get across. Or what does it mean to you, right? How are you feeling right now as you're listening to it? It makes me feel sad, then feel sadder. It makes me feel triumphant, feel more triumphant. Whatever you're feeling, lean into it and see where it takes you. You might
like I was talking about with the Mahler and the use of the Dies Irae theme, that the da 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 from the sequence from the Mass for the Dead is a 1,500-year-old, well, maybe not 1,500. It's a 1,000-year-old cultural commonplace, which was spread all around the world, and then if you know that, then you go, God, I never. Look at how he turned that theme into that theme and into that theme, and he used that little element of that theme to do this, and how he's giving that theme through styles of his own day. And you have a different appreciation for a given piece of music and the level of creativity that's going on from a composer.
Right.
So, I agree with you that I mean I regard it as a sacred duty to cultivate cultural awareness and in my own experience, but
what
I'm not. I mean, I don't know if it really is a sacred duty, but you aren't going to have a civilization very long if you don't.
I should say a sacred duty insofar as it's sacred to who you are and the experience you're having here. We can have all kinds of conversations about why we're on this in this life, the meaning of life, the lack of meaning, whatever. All we can say for sure is we experience something while we're here. And we experience something at all times while we're here. We're never not experiencing something. Even when we sleep, we're experiencing whatever dreams are. We're always experiencing something. And what experience do you want to have? Do you want to have this superficial experience? Or do you want to increase the depth of your life's vocabulary and the experience that you have? I mean, it's all sitting right there.
When you get right down to it, life itself is a fairly narrowly defined set of parameters: birth, life, reproduction, possibly, and death. I mean, it's pretty easy to get, and it's a commonplace. It happens to pretty much everybody.
Yes.
But then there's the critically examined life, and looking for deeper meaning in the experiences that you have, that you encounter individually, the small variations on life that a composer tries to illustrate. And and that's I think that's worth doing. I
Yeah.
kept a journal of this week of Mahler, which ran to about 11,500 words, and
It's a lot of words.
well, there was a lot of living that went on during that week.
That's almost an Atlantic Monthly.
You think? I remember the days when that would have been a San Diego Reader lead article. Not anymore, I don't think.
No, I think it's like 2,000 words.
Something
Two
like
or
that.
four.
But my point is that just diarizing the progress of my week brought, and with the Mahler laid on top of it, and thinking about life and death and resurrection and people in my life and my own career and one thing and another, where I am with that, found a lot of points of ironic contact and similarity, and I'm fairly amused by what I wrote.
Good.
Well,
one should like what one writes.
one should, but one doesn't always, and one just throws it out.
True.
So
That's got value as well.
but it's on that theme of the examined life, and where are we, where have we been, and where are we going, and that's what composers of music try to comment on, and it's worth thinking and talking about.
And what you have is kind of it's distilled for us. So the standard repertoire, which is vast, has been kind of brought together into this package for us over the years. Things come in, come out, and falling out, but there's a core group of pieces of music that stay, and the reason they stay is because something rings true about them.
Yeah.
From generation to generation to generation. And my question for myself is, why would I waste my time with anything else until I've at least explored this? Yeah. Because it is, for me, wasting my time. I was over at a friend's house, and there was an Alexa, and someone said, "Alexa, you don't have one, do you?"
No, I don't. And
you wouldn't.
And I never will.
Always listening. Alexa, play good music. Da 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 da. I was like, what the heck? What is this? It was, and so someone said, "Alexa, stop." And then the comment was, "Well, I wonder what the bad music is." If that was the good music.
Yeah.
So there's this.
No, I commented to somebody about that the other day. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. There is only human intelligence applied.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Yep. So you've got, you just start with Beethoven symphonies.
Sure.
Or Mozart piano concertos. Or do not start with Wagner.
Heavy.
But glorious.
Unless you're a manic depressive.
Do not start with Mahler. Do not start with Brahms. Start with the things that everyone knows. Start with Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. Start with
the hits.
With Eine kleine Nachtmusik.
And you say, I really like that. What is that? That's
Start with
that's a
Moonlight
Handel
Sonata.
Concerto Grosso. Okay,
Yeah.
go down that way.
Right.
And no, I
Now I had the advantage, and I'm like a broken record with this. It's a play on words coming, because I constantly reference that I worked at Tower Records, and that experience, and so did you.
So did I.
And that experience was invaluable because I worked in the classical section, and so I saw at least the names of all the composers.
Yes.
And I saw which sections were bigger and which were smaller.
You know, I remember seeing the name Sorabji.
Okay.
Right? I didn't find out who Sorabji was until watching a documentary on John Ogden, the pianist, about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But I knew who Sorabji was. I just didn't know anything about him.
Right.
And so, yeah,
Mine was Hans Roth.
Oh,
R-O-T-T.
yes. Who Mahler took a lot of cues from.
His section was this. It was like 2 CDs.
Yeah.
And it was a symphony.
Because he died as a student.
Yeah.
But
the symphony it's quality.
It is quality.
It's a good piece of music.
And Mahler took a lot of cues from that, like texture-wise.
Yeah.
And
so I had a trick at Tower Records. So you spent 4 hours on the floor, and you had your section, and you organized your section, and you took whatever questions or phone calls while you're on the floor, and then you had 4 hours on the register, just beeping things into oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
So my trick would be, because you had your repeat customers, your regulars.
Oh, the regulars, yeah.
So I would walk up to a regular and ask them for advice on classical, on what to listen to, who to listen to, when, like where to start with a certain. I remember I asked one guy, I was feeling confident about starting to listen to Wagner, and I said, "Can you, like, where should I start with Wagner?" And this guy broke down. He said Die Walküre Act 1 was where he thought. In retrospect, I would just say, listen, do Lohengrin or Tannhäuser. But then he gave me, like, singers from the 30s, singers, from the 40s, singers from the 50s, singers.
Context.
Like, he gave me all the singers.
I miss those people very much.
Yeah. And so there's another guy who came in all the time. He only had recordings. His entire collection, which was thousands of CDs, was Wagner, Bruckner, and Mahler. That was it. And you get him started, and he would not stop.
Was that Ron?
It might have been Ron.
With the beard?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I remember Ron. I wrote about Ron this week. Ron was, are you out there, Ron? I wonder. Because Ron had a blue VW Bug. This was when I was at Warehouse Records. And Ron had a blue VW Bug, and he would come in, and we would talk about Mahler. Ron was a Mahler nut.
I think you meant Warehouse.
Warehouse Records. Ron was a Mahler nut, and Ron had a customized license plate that said G. Mahler. And Ron worried about this, because this was before you could put a space in between the G and the Mahler. And Ron worried that people would misinterpret it and pronounce it Jamaler, and Ron was
very particular,
hand wringing about this, and I said, Ron, I really don't think you have to worry about that. I said, even if they don't know who he is, they're going to understand that it's a letter G and the name Mahler.
Right.
I really think
no
so. And Ron was like, do you really think so? Like,
God
bless him. I hope G. Mahler is still on the road.
I can't remember what conductor he was talking about, but it was about Bruckner editions. There are several editions of Bruckner symphonies, and he said, and Hornstein did the Novak, and shame on him. I was like, oh, this is a thing. I had no idea there was the right version and the wrong version.
I'll tell you another thing that Ron liked, and that was, I remember when Yoav Talmy and the symphony were doing the Reinhold Glier Symphony No. 3, Ilya Muromets.
Okay.
Great big Orientalist tapestry of life on the Central Asian steppe, and very dramatic, warrior music and everything. And Ron was all over that. Oh,
sure.
This was going to be a big deal, and they recorded it too. The San Diego Symphony recorded Ilya Muromets. But Ron was all over the Glier.
Yeah. So that being said, I had the opportunity to benefit from the cultivation that other people had done for themselves.
Yes. Well, that's the way the old classical record sales interaction with the customers used to be. It was a learning seminar. People came in there to read the notes on the back of the records and to absorb it and learn. And
now we do it on YouTube.
And do we, or do we just do? You get
now.
Minimal information, but yeah, it's. I miss that culture.
That
was a very self-educational culture, and there was.
I educated myself in a lot of ways on liner notes.
Oh, absolutely.
Which don't exist anymore.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Wikipedia.
To have
Wikipedia page. Most famous pieces of music have a Wikipedia page, and they're pretty good. They're not as musicologically sound as the liner notes,
but they're also not as related to they're often those notes were sort of filtered through and related to the performance that was going to be given on that record by a conductor.
Yeah,
and
that conductor, and what that conductor had done with other repertoire, and then you're like, oh. Go look at this
and
other
that was
repertoire.
part of the cultural
Yeah.
conversation, and I miss that very much.
Yeah.
I really do. I miss interacting with those people because they were as instrumental in educating me as I was in trying to educate them and give
Right.
them a recommendation.
Yeah.
I think that's a loss.
It is. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
A record library was literally a library, both of music and of textual information in those times. And, I mean, they're still out there. Go to the thrift shop and look at the classical records. You'll see the liner notes all over the
true.
back of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's handy to have and valuable to have. And that's why I still have records. I want that information. I want it to hand.
Right. Yeah,
You know.
I don't have records or CDs anymore. I gave them to you.
You did. But it's all right. You'll buy them again before you die.
I might.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, so you've got the core set of this is, it's like, you go to the Louvre, you're going to look at the Mona Lisa. Why would you not? You have the opportunity to listen to anything you want that has been,
But you see, that's part
that
of...
is one, it is one the cultural, and it is one the battlefield of ideas. It's still standing.
You're better
Why
to...
wouldn't you start with this, with the ones that have
Well, exactly.
victorious?
And you're better off limiting yourself to a certain course of listening to start with, because that what you just said, you can listen to anything you want. What does Aristotle say about total freedom? Left to himself, if man has total freedom to choose to do anything, he will do nothing.
Yeah.
Because one choice cannot be prioritized over another. And that's kind of where our culture is right now. It is in an extreme state of passivity and inaction, and it's not making any decisions towards what it's going to listen to or why.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Right now,
and then consequently, very little music of importance gets written, because why write it?
Right. So my daughter, who's 20 now and is in college, sent me. She loves music, old timey music, like 20s, 30s, 40s, Al Bowley, that kind of stuff. She likes the sound quality of it, like the scratchier the better for her. So she sent me a late 30s, maybe early 40s arrangement of Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto, and not realizing it had a different name. It just said, what's it in the key of F?
The number one?
Yeah, the one.
B flat.
B flat. So it just said piano and B flat with jazz orchestra or something.
It's probably the Glenn Miller.
So then I sent her. I was like, oh, that's this. And so I sent her a Spotify of that, I don't know, Martha Argerich playing it.
Uh-huh.
And she texts back, it's so much grander. And so she got it. Like, she listened to a couple different recordings of it, and she got into it, and we were talking about it, and she said, but that's the only piece that really appeals to me, classical music-wise. And I was like, great.
It's a place to start.
It just takes one. And mine was also Tchaikovsky. It was 1812 Overture.
If you like the Tchaikovsky first, you might like the Grieg.
Yep. You might like the Schumann if you like the Grieg.
There you go. You see how one thing leads to another.
Yeah. I sent her the Rachmaninoff second, and it didn't do it for her. 'Cause I think that stormy beginning is so...
Yeah.
But
But she might come round to Rachmaninoff in the end.
Yeah.
Speaking of.
I was going to say, we were talking about a little exercise. If you took symphonies 1 through 9, and you had to pick the best first symphony by any composer.
Yeah.
But as soon as you use that composer,
You can't use them again.
he's out.
Right.
And I was trying to remember what I did for number 2, and it was not Mahler, it was Rachmaninoff. Got the second symphony. If only for the orgasm in the third movement, which is, it's real.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just as an aside.
I was listening to the Bruckner second the other night. That's a very good symphony.
I love the slow movement.
Oh,
It
so
is
do I.
fantastic. It's really good.
That is a wonderful piece.
It's really good. You do have to listen to a capable conductor and orchestra, though. Else, I've listened to a couple and it's kind of fallen flat.
Well, you could say the same for a lot of pieces. I mean, for most pieces.
I mean, but like Bruckner's Fourth, you can listen to anyone is going to sound good. But the first and second, I find you really have to have a Brucknerian in charge.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful piece.
Yeah, it is. I love that slow movement of Bruckner's second.
They're doing the Bruckner 7 at the symphony
in May.
It's not my favorite Bruckner piece, I have to say.
No.
I love the opening theme. Ba, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Ya, da, 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 da. That's great. But on the whole, it's not my favorite symphony of his.
Of Bruckner's, yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, I would prefer to hear 3, 5, 6, or 8 instead.
I'd probably take 2, 4, 5, and 8.
We've just lost most of our audience. They're like, what are these guys talking about?
Well, they might actually take our recommendation and go listen.
Yeah.
So
I think if you're going to start listening to Bruckner, okay, the Fourth is the kind of the obvious place to start.
the horn opening is one of the greats.
But I think the Third Symphony is a fantastic place to start as well.
Because
it's got a jump scare in the beginning.
I don't know. That Fourth Symphony opening over tremolo strings, you can just see the fingers of clouds coming over the Alps. It's just amazing.
Over the Eiger,
yeah. Well, yeah. So get in there and start a conversation. Classical music, just because it's classical, all that means is that it's meant to be performed the way it's written. It has an objective quality. These were the composer's intentions. Therefore, honor them. And as opposed to a more subjective type of music like jazz, which is meant to be variable. So classical implies it has a classical structure, and I mean there's a period called classical as well, but classical music in general means it has it's like the Michelangelo's David. It doesn't change shape every time you listen to it. It is what it is.
Yes.
And it's meant to be that way. It's very carefully planned to be that way.
Yes.
Get in there and listen.
Architecture too, especially Brahms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say I would start with recordings before going to a live concert, because if you go to a live concert, you might be feeling bored and your only option is to feel more bored.
Yeah, because if you go to a concert and it's not something that you already like, and then it's what was I going to say? It's start the conversation.
First Symphony, it's great.
You'll surprise yourself as to what you do like and what you don't,
and what you used to like and now don't. Like I said, my
That's
journey
right.
started with the 1812 Overture.
You'll come around to it again,
and I will not. I will not. I can't.
But what you want to do is start a conversation.
Although I will say, I now understand. All these years later, I was like, "Oh, this is the Battle of Borodino." Like I never really knew what the 1812 Overture is based on. They lost that battle. The Russians lost. So what's the victory at the end? Like all the bells, church bells are pealing, and the big, Russian hymn comes back. Well, before that, you got this da 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 da. It goes on forever.
Yes.
Well, that's Napoleon's retreat and all the French dying on the way out of Russia.
It was cold.
Yeah. So this kind of diminishing, like descending string theme is the war of attrition, and then that's where the victory happens. Which is, I do like that, because I always listen like, why is this so long, and like why what are we doing here?
Well, the essence of it all is listen and start a conversation that leads to a classical rebellion.
All right.